A few years ago, I was on a prayer and fasting retreat. I had hope and expectation that God would meet me in a way that I had never before experienced. As the second night approached, I found myself frustrated. Frustrated that God hadn't met my expectations and showed up in the way I thought He should. I went to bed hungry, cold, tired, and annoyed. Though it was August, I hadn't prepared myself for a Minnesota August, and I woke up freezing at 3 a.m. in my tent as I realized the temperature had dropped below 40 degrees. So I hopped in my car and drove for a while, trying to warm up. After not feeling satisfied with this experience, I decided to curl up in a camping chair and sleeping bag on the dock and wait for the sun to rise. The back bay was filled with fog. It was cold, I was hungry, lonely, and frustrated. I sat there waiting for God to show me something. Slowly, the sun began to glow as the sun approached the horizon. Upon cresting the treetops, the fog instantly dissipated, as did my frustration. Just like that, upon a clear view of the sun, my attitude had changed. The sun had risen and pushed out my loneliness, my fear, and my frustration. In the book of Zechariah, God's people had found themselves in a similar situation. After being exiled to Babylon for nearly 70 years, they had been back in Jerusalem, the holy city, for around 20 years, and they had high expectations and hopes that the holy temple would be rebuilt. As they returned to the city, the foundation was quickly laid, but the rest of the temple wasn't built, and so the foundation laid there without the temple upon it, and their hopes and their expectations of this return to glory and return to the center of worship had been confused and frustrated, and they wondered, where is God? Why has God not shown up? Why has God not built His temple? Why has God not done immeasurably more than all we could ask or imagine? We had these great expectations of the presence of God and the glory of God being here among us, and yet He hasn't showed up, and that hasn't happened. So as we study the book of Zechariah, we're going to see some real people who had real expectations that weren't met, and they had to wrestle through their frustration. But what we'll see in the midst of their frustration is that God's voice comes and He says, "I come and I dwell in your midst, declares the Lord. Be silent, all flesh, before the Lord, for He has roused Himself from His holy dwelling. And His holy dwelling comes and it rests among His people, and God will be with His people." And so there's always hope on the horizon. God's coming to be with us, and that's the hope that we have.